guys, we're back. I wanted to jump into the console and just talk a little bit freely about the progress of this game, the progress of building out motorbike physics in Unreal Engine 5. And then, for anyone working on a similar project, I was going to jump into an example blueprint of how you can how you can achieve something a little bit more advanced from, what you get out of the box. But the final thing we're going to kind of go into is just the fact that if you are making a motorbike game, why Unreal Engine Chaos vehicles is probably a terrible idea. So what I've essentially found out is that I'm going to have to start again, build the physics from the ground up with my own system in Unreal, because out of the box, this is built for a car, and those issues as such just make things incredibly, incredibly painful for us. So firstly, let's jump into first person and drop a gear into first, boom, bang it up to second, up to third, and let's run a quick lap of this track. So I don't know if you saw the previous video where I hit a lap in MX bikes, but if you did, this will be an absolute night and day difference when it comes to fluidity, speed, and just, what the actual gameplay looks like. With that said, we actually hit that kicker. Awesome. Let's see if we can get it around this berm. Let's build up our speed. Fuck, I should have dropped the gear. I kind of cheated there and used a magical force to self-right myself. All right, let's get ourselves back up. Let's get over this little fucking hump. Boom. We're gonna snake around the side and let's hit that dragon's back and make our ways up the section. Boom, 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 boom. I had to cheat with some magical forces again. To be honest, the actual implementation is not bad, but we're really being limited by chaos vehicles, which is, why Motocross the game has built their own system from scratch, which I fucking wish I had 1/10 of the brain power to know how the fuck those guys are doing such a good job. But yeah, anyways, look, let's get into this a little bit. So, why are the physics so bad, or why do they look so shit? Well, firstly, this game is completely physics driven. So there's no magical forces, because the whole intention here is to be, a sim racer or a simcade, exactly like MX bikes. Now, as we're turning, the way that this works is purely through normal means, which is counter steering. So if I want to turn to the left, the bike's actually going to initially turn right to, pull the bike over, and then we can engage in the turn, and we're going to steer or counter steer to maintain that position. So by moving the actual analog sticks, all we're really doing is telling the bike or the game where we want our desired lean angle to be. The issue though is, if you've noticed, the turning is a little bit janky. So let's hit a turn and look how there's like a little bit, let's get back up. There's like a little bit of resistance in a way, and you can't really turn while leant over. So let's pretend this is like not a dirt bike, it's a MotoGP bike. How weird is this? The turn radius is so huge, and it's just behaving weird. Like a bike would turn much easier, much sharper. And the issue, if you pivot into Blender and we look at our model, this is what's going on. So, what we have is our bike. And if we look at the forks of the motorbike, they're coming at an angle rather than being straight up. You see, with a car, it's rarely going to be straight up. And the result of that is when we turn a car's wheel, this is how it behaves, right? It's turning on that blue axis. Perfectly fine. That's exactly what we want from a car. But with a motorbike, what we expect is this axis over here. So we're still turning the wheel, but it's completely different enough to cause us major issues in this game. And this just isn't something that chaos physics is built to handle. And the problem we get is these unintended, like, friction zones, I want to call it, and just unexpected results. Because when you're holding a steep angle and you try to turn without having any rake or trail, your stability, your control is just completely fucked. Um, yeah, I don't know. Just that is one of the biggest issues, and it doesn't seem like something I can fix somewhat easily based on how things are implemented. The other issue there beyond rake and trail not being simulated or adjustable easily in chaos vehicles is that the actual way the suspension or the wheels are, I suppose, captured and their collisions are considered is it doesn't really consider this complex geometry of the wheel. So, if you're just kind of going on straight flat surface, you're going to be fine. But as soon as we're leaning over or we're hitting really rough environments like we would in motocross, the simulation is just so simple. And it's just not a complex of enough ray trace that we would need to accurately know, to accurately simulate what we want to. Now, realize I have been bitching a little bit. Anyone with a little bit of dev expertise is maybe screaming at their monitor saying, hey, that's actually easy. You just need to fix this and do that. But what I'm thinking is I should probably just start from scratch and try to build everything custom, just like motocross the game. I don't know if it's a good idea, but I think it's going to be my best bet. Now, beyond that, what I want to jump into next was a little bit of an example of achieving something cool and complex with the limitations of chaos vehicles. So what I'm going to talk about is how we can implement brake tapping, or, when you hit a motocross jump, you hit the throttle in the air and your bike actually tilts backwards a bit. So this phenomenon is rarely done through gyroscopic precession, which is also a big contributor for how we get those natural motocross whips. And we're specifically right now going to be focusing on the brake tap and hitting the throttle in the air. So by default, if we hit a jump in Unreal and if I slam the brakes, slam the throttle, nothing happens, right? That was pretty boring. That was pretty uneventful. Realistically, what we would expect, and let's get a bit more of a run up, pop into second gear. Let's hit the brakes midair now and see what happens. So I don't know if you noticed that, but the bike actually ever so slightly tilted forward, and it might be a bit more pronounced if we hit the throttle. Once again, this is all stuff I've kind of created and simulated. So it's not, there we go, throttle, brake, right? You see that little bit of a tilt. I haven't simulated this perfectly accurately at all. I just kind of cared about getting it working, and the actual realism side was something that could be addressed later. But that over there is really cool, and it's actually much more of a challenge than you would think it is to do in chaos vehicles, because the issue here is that to understand how fast the wheels are spinning, we need to understand either the idle speed of the engine, or we need to understand the rotations of the wheel. The problem here is if we are, the problem is that we need to know how fast both front and back wheels are rotating at any point in time. And if we jump into our code over here, and this is the function to do this effect that we just talked about, you would think, yes, let's first of all check, hey, is our bike in the air? And if our bike is in the air, let's get the angular velocity of our wheels. The big problem here is that the way chaos is built, as soon as the bike leaves the ground and is in the air, this value will always be 0. So chaos stops simulating the velocity of a wheel when the car or the wheel is in the air. Absolutely no fucking idea why they've done this, but this has something to do with how they've built the system in the game from, not the game, but the framework from the ground up. We're only sort of calculating the engine speeds, the wheel velocities, etc., when the wheels are touching the ground, which is completely inconvenient for us creating a motorbike game. So what I came up with for this quick and dirty solution is, at the very least, because we know what the velocity is when we're on the ground, we can simulate this in the air by caching this value and, once again, doing some very quick and dirty, inaccurate simulations. So in this instance, what we're going to do over here is when the bike is lost on the ground, let's grab that value and cache it and store it in this wheel velocity variable. Okay, now that the bike is no longer on the ground and we're actually in the air, there's a couple things we'll check for. Are we tapping the brake? Are we hitting the throttle? Are we just idling? So we've left the face the jump. We're now idling over here. All we're going to do is as time ticks on, we are going to be essentially slowly decreasing from our current angular velocity until we get down to 0. So this is how we're simulating it. Aside from that, if we do something like tap the brake, based on this factor and these forces over here, over time, once again, we're going to decrease that rear wheel angular velocity all the way down to 0. And on the flip side, on the throttle, that is going to be increased over time a little bit as we build it up. Now, all of this will essentially amalgamate into a torque that is applied. So if the brake tap is applied, the torque, of course, is going to tilt the bike forward. And if the throttle is applied, of course, the result is tilting the bike upwards. Now, as you can imagine, the sweet spot in making this feel real is in a lot of different things, right? It's like how much change invokes how much of a response. That brake tap there, that looked, I think, pretty real. And also, as soon as you hit a brake tap, you don't want to be able to just slam the throttle and get the bike right back 90 degrees. So let's hit a little brake tap, hit the throttle. Not much happened, right? That is pretty realistic. And you can't just leave a jump and spam the throttle to save you from a nosedive and then just keep doing it until you're eventually completely upright. So you need to have limits in place, you need to play around with it, but definitely a good little working basic implementation. Anyways, that was a little bit of a quick video just talking about what the vehicle looks like. In terms of when I put out another video next, is probably really just going to be when I've actually sat down and built out a little bit more of a custom vehicle approach.